all of you, and I realized oh, got it. I think I found the one squeaky spot on my floor, so I hope that's not distracting or you can hear it. We are just a few days after Halloween, of course, so it seems ghosts are an appropriate topic, right? However, it's not the type of ghost that you might be thinking of, at least at first thought. That term ghosting nowadays means ending a personal relationship by suddenly and without explanation cutting off all communication. It's mostly used in terms of digital departure, a friend not responding to a text or a voicemail, unfriending or unfollowing us. And the term ghosting actually became an official entry into the Merriam-Webster dictionary in 2017. And it is, sorry, mental error, there we go. It says ghosting, the practice of ending a personal relationship with someone by suddenly and without explanation withdrawing from all communication. Has that ever happened to you where God was concerned? Or whatever you call your spiritual source, your inspiration, divine guidance, that inner knowing. We know here that we use different names for that for each person. So has it ever felt like maybe God ghosted you, or maybe you ghosted God? A personal relationship with God, of course, is just that, personal, so I cannot presume to know what it really feels like for each of you. I can offer some examples of what it might feel like when God appears to ghost you, or vice versa. It might feel like you just can't get to that place of inner peace like you used to be able to. Or perhaps when you pray or meditate or do spiritual mind treatment, your ability to connect just doesn't feel there. Your ability to stay present is a little vague. It may be unanswered prayers or treatments. It may happen when you feel so connected to God one day during your prayer and quiet time, and then you go out into the world and you see and you hear about all the atrocities going on, and it does not feel like there is a loving presence in all of this world. It's just some apparition. Or have you ever been afraid to do a science of mind treatment because it might not manifest, or it might? So science of mind, which is what we study here, I think we're all familiar with that. In the, excuse me, in the textbook, Ernest Holmes says, there is no such thing as your mind, my mind, his or her mind, or God's mind. There's just mind in which we all live and move and have our being. The spirit within us is the divine mind. So we're taught that, and we believe that, I believe here, that we cannot separate that from that which created us. Yet sometimes, no matter how strong our love for our spiritual path, we can feel a disconnection from that source. At least I can. It happens. It's happened to me in the past, might happen again. When this feeling of disconnection falls, it can really be quite devastating. It can feel as, if everything we've held dear no longer makes any sense, doesn't feel right, doesn't fuel that passion for our lives, the passion for spirit. And it can feel hurtful even. Now, science of mind says that it might be because I'm thinking of God as separate, or someone or something that can be ghosted, like a friend. And we know that's not the way it works. It's always there. But regardless, our spiritual search and our connection can sometimes feel a little lonely, especially if we are somewhere where there isn't a center like this to meet with other people. Now, the term ghosting is often used, of course, about dating or romantic or intimate relationships. And I was thought about it, it's really not unlike our connection with spirit. And yes, like everything, there is a psychological study now about ghosting. Wendy Walsh is a psychology professor, and she writes studies that have shown that rejection of any kind, real or imaginary, activates that same pain pathway in our brain as any physical pain. Meaning there is a biological link between rejection and pain. Now that goes for friends, partners, and I would say our spiritual connection as well. We can feel sad or rejected by God or that universal presence when everything seems to be going wrong, and you just, God, why does God hate me? What have I done wrong? And if you're a religious science person, you learn that we create what's going on in our lives. And you might look out and say, wow, what a mess I've created. And that can be a difficult part of this teaching at times, which is a whole other talk. But suffice it to say, we need to get away from that and give ourselves a break, because there is a lot going on in creation, not just us. And Dr. Walsh says that staying connected to others has evolved as a human survival skill. Our brains have what's called a social monitoring system, and it uses our mood, other people, environment cues to teach us how to respond situationally. But when you're ghosted, there is no closure, there's no connection, there's no source for that information. So you might begin to question yourself, and you make choices that sabotage your self-worth, your self-esteem. And that can be true when we feel ghosted by God. Now, I don't know for you, but it can be a downward spiral for me sometimes. I think it's important to look briefly at why we disconnect sometimes in order to get to the remedies for it. Now, if this hasn't happened to you, that's terrific, and it's okay. You'll still pick up some tips for when or if it happens, or even when you feel disconnected from another person. So I don't want to presume everyone goes through this. While there are as many reasons, probably as members of all of us here, why we might feel ghosted by God, here's one big one. The outside world, as I've mentioned, especially right now, man, oh man.
Right now, and I was wrong.
We could look at that and
time change.
oh, I hear someone talking, but
like 8 o'clock.
we have a tragedy strike our personal lives, as well as things out in the world, as I mentioned, and we think, wow, I'm a good person, or he or she is a great person. Why did this happen to them or to me? And we beat ourselves up for creating this. Another reason I ghost God, I get busy. I don't attend to my spiritual work. And I might go for a few weeks. Hey, I haven't meditated, I haven't prayed, and everything's going okay. So does it really make a difference? It doesn't matter, except that it does. It's kind of like going off that healthy diet or not exercising. You might not notice it for the first few days or first few weeks, but trust me, there will come a time when you put on your pants and they don't zip. It sneaks up on you. I'm probably just speaking for myself there. So there is a time when we need to be centered and clear and connected, and because we can feel alone and scattered and afraid at times. So the more we can practice up on that, it makes it come a little easier. Now, have you ever tried to do a Science of Mind treatment and it didn't manifest? Or it did? Either way, it was scary. You felt disappointed, maybe. And that can feel like rejection. That can feel like God isn't listening to me. This Science of Mind stuff doesn't work. So those are just a few of the reasons we might feel disconnected. But how do we turn back and get in relationship with our spiritual source and others when it feels like spiritual connection is only a ghost of a memory? Well, we could call this the ghost busting section. It's the only bad pun I'll have, I hope. So really, much like dating, there are ways to reconnect. And as I was searching, doing a little research on ghosting, I realized that, dating techniques do have something in common with spirituality, sort of. So I thought, could this dating advice work in reconnecting with spirit? So let's examine that for a minute. The psychologist I mentioned says people are craving authenticity. She talks about why people look for and enter into intimate relationships or friendships. I'm guessing the search for authenticity is why all of us here probably began our spiritual search or our study years ago. We were looking for authenticity in who we are, where we came from, what the heck created me and everything around, what happens after I leave this place. Those big questions. We want some authenticity in feeling it and knowing it. We have that longing for more connection to know ourselves better and our place in the world. I think we are craving authenticity, not from another person, but from within ourselves and from that God connection. Also, being vulnerable, Dr. Walsh said, is the number one thing that creates intimacy between people. And if you worry about being hurt all the time, you're not able to be vulnerable. And that kind of blocks our connection. Now, in Science of Mind, I think we often use the term surrender more than being vulnerable. So let me be clear, vulnerability, I don't mean letting yourself be used or abused. It's more about being open and possibly less controlling about orchestrating everything in our lives. So our fear of being a little vulnerable or surrendering can be a problem when we're trying to connect to God, because it just feels kind of scary sometimes. But here's something we can do, dating in our real life or dating God, so to speak. We make ourselves available, right? If we want to be a friend to someone or in a relationship with one, we make ourselves available. That's the same to that divine presence. Sometimes we forget to ask God to be present in our lives, and that lets that creative spirit show up. So just like we have to make ourselves available to a physical partner in our life, right? We have to make time to get to know them. So a first step in getting to know a potential partner is asking for a date, right? We got to let them know we're interested. So for me, maybe asking God for a date, not, hopefully that doesn't sound creepy to you. I mean it in a positive way. But for me, it means I offer some time to be with God. Whether it's quiet time, walking meditation, anything that lets you make time for your partner, like any good relationship. Sometimes I forget to do that. My car is doing a weird thing. The radio, it'll be on a station. All of a sudden, it just flips around and lands on another station. And it happened to me Thursday. And it landed on a Christian radio station, which I actually listen to sometimes. I like to get information from all sources. But they were talking about marriage and what you need to do to make it last. And one guy, don't know who it is, because it was flipping around. But he said he uses this guide in his marriage: pray daily, date weekly, and retreat yearly. And I thought, hey, that could kind of work for God too, right? We ought to pray or meditate daily. And then we want to maybe date weekly, make a longer time to meet with God, whether it's coming to a service like this or taking a day to really just focusing on our spiritual practice, shutting out all the other noise. And then retreat yearly, right? Whether it's with other people like at the Big Sky retreat or a personal retreat. And of course, we may want to do that more than a year. But I kind of love that reminder: pray daily, date weekly, and retreat yearly. And kind of that retreat makes me think of, observing the Sabbath, that do nothing on that day except put God or your spiritual practice first. The other thing we can do when we're trying to make a connection with someone or God, ask for conversation. Now, I felt a little silly doing this, but a couple of weeks ago, I was just feeling a little just stuck. And I said, God, I'd like to get closer to you. I'd like to have a conversation and feel what I can do to feel your presence more strongly. And I just said it out loud, because really saying it out loud sometimes packs more of a punch, right? And it helps us get clear on our conversation, what we want to have and what issue we might want to talk about. So another skill we want to have when we're dating or improving our friendships is to be open and receptive to what that person's saying without judgment or offering advice. It's kind of like, when Reverend Charles heard the message to move to Montana. I don't know, maybe you grumbled a little bit, but eventually said, okay, doesn't make sense, but okay. So we want to be open and honoring, no matter how weird it may seem. And here's a weird example. On my birthday, I was in Denver with my nephew and my niece-in-law. She and I were sitting out on the porch, and she loves to decorate for Halloween. They really go all out. And she was telling me, because I've never been there at Halloween, she was showing me exactly where on the trees, what they do with the lights and the different decorations, going into very explicit detail about how they decorate for Halloween. Now, this is back mid-September. All of a sudden, a FedEx truck pulls up, which is kind of weird on a Sunday at 11 o'clock. And I said, oh, you must have got a package. So that's weird. We didn't ask for any, didn't order anything. He opens up the truck. He gets out this big box, and I see a big round orange circle that kind of looks like a pumpkin. I say, wow, must be getting something for Halloween. He says, that's so weird. So he comes up and sets it down. And sure enough, it's this big box of a witch that climbs up the wall and everything. And she said, are you sure that's for us? Because we didn't order anything. And yeah, okay, right here, I'll sign. And a few minutes later, my nephew came out. He said, oh no, they weren't supposed to deliver that till like October 4th. I was going to hide it. It's for our anniversary present. Now, this sounds so silly, but I am telling you, what are the odds? We're sitting in Denver talking detailed about Halloween, and here comes this decoration, unexpected, on a Sunday, out of the blue. Now, for me, that may seem wacky to you, but those synchronicities show up to me as God or universal spirit energy saying, hey, There's something going on here. So when that happens, I think it's important to honor that. I have a little notebook. Sometimes I write it down, my little woo-woo events. So I think God energy responds in kind to other energy. And the more you put into it, the more you get out of it, the more you honor it, the more you say, okay, thanks for that sign. I don't know what it meant, but it sure was fun. The more it happens, or the more we notice it. So making time, trusting, listening, all good skills for interpersonal relationships and our personal interrelationship with God. Talk to God out loud. It opens up self-discovery, if nothing else. God consciousness. Hey, on our date, I'd like to go for a walk on my favorite trail, or whatever it is for you. And here's what I'd like to talk about. God, I'd like to hear from you about how I can feel your presence more deeply. Or maybe there is an issue I'd like to talk about, and I'd really like to get some answers from you. And, how does that date sound? Of course, that doesn't mean we can't ask God or tap in on a moment's notice. I've done that a lot on slick highways, and so far it's worked. I opened up a book, I think it's called Bibliomancy. You guys do that ever, where you're just like, I just need some inspiration. I'm just going to open up a book and see what shows up. And I was at my sister's not long ago, and she has a prayer book by the bedside. And I just opened it up. And it went to a passage in Psalms, Psalm 10. And it says this: why do you stand so far off, Lord, and hide yourself in time of trouble? And it goes on, I'm paraphrasing, but to ask God why the wicked and the liars prevail, and quote, the innocent are broken and fall before their power. They say in their heart, God is forgotten. He hides his face as he will never notice. So that meant I was feeling at that time a little lost. I'm like, wow, there have been those in doubt or have lost a little bit of their faith throughout time, throughout the Bible. It's not new, so we shouldn't blame ourselves or feel badly or that there's no hope. Regardless of how it's done, ghosting is a kind of a heartbreaking reality in today's dating world, and it can be shattering in terms of feeling spiritually ghosted or kind of gutted. And as you can see, it's called ghosting because it involves someone essentially vanishing into thin air as if it were a ghost. But we know it's not true, but it can feel it. It can be because of a lack of spiritual nourishment in the form of ritual or meditation, disappointing actions or words of someone we respect, or our community seeming that we can't exist without angry disagreements. And as a reminder, things we can do to reconnect. Do nothing. That's one idea. Sometimes we just need a break from our active spiritual paths, and it doesn't mean the relationship is over, but sometimes we try too hard to build that bridge and that disconnection, and it just makes things worse. So sometimes we just need a break. If that's for you, feel fine doing that. Introduce a regular daily spiritual practice. We know to do that, of course. Sometimes I have to remind myself and do it even if it doesn't feel like I need it. We can take some time to contemplate what it was that drew you to your spiritual path in the first place. And I love this suggestion when I read it. It's like, oh, yeah, what did? What opened you up? Where were you? Who was there with you? What were you doing and how were you feeling? Those early moments can represent the source of your inspiration over the years. And it can simply kind of change that direction or remind you what nourished you about a spiritual path. If it was a book, pick it up and read it again. If it was music, listen to it again. Remember that feeling and let it flow through you. And I don't know about you, but take just a moment to think maybe your first exposure to religious science or new thought. I remember exactly where I was sitting at Mile High Church in Denver. I don't remember the message, but the music is what filled me and brought tears to my eyes. I went, oh yeah. There are things I can do to get back to that because I love that feeling. And a little bit of Druid wisdom that I read about in reconnecting with our spiritual source. Get back to the land. Listen to the land, rather. Listen to the land. It says the land is our constant teacher. It's what we emerged from, and it's where we will return. It's the land that feeds us, gives us our water, our bodies, our stories. And sometimes when we lose connection with our path, what we need to do is get away from the human world and walk on into the land. Open up our eyes, our ears, our spirits, feel and listen and rediscover the land. And that for me also works really well. Now, Maddie, I don't know if we've been able to get our music ready, but it's coming up, so I'll just give you a little heads up. Remember how I said at the beginning that I felt a little silly asking God, hey, God, you how can I reconnect with you? What can I do? Just help me out here. I said it out loud and I heard an answer instantly. It was, listen to some music. And I thought, oh yeah, I used to start every day with kind of a Karen Drucker song or something like that. And now that I'm on a very early schedule, I just hop out of bed and basically get out the door. Doesn't mean I couldn't do that when I come home, but I haven't. And I went, oh yeah, I used to use a piece of music to set my tone for the day, and that did it for me. So that's where you can sometimes get a real clear answer when you ask something out loud, whether it's God responding or your soul or your brain responding to you, what your soul really needs or wants, it works. And I said, okay, well, what song? And I had an instant song come to my mind. And it's a song by Lisa Ferraro, who actually sang it at our practitioner retreat. And shall we give it a try, Maddie, and see if we can hear it?
Okay.
I hope you could hear that well enough for that to sink into you deeply. If not, it is Lisa Ferraro, and it's called In the Quietude. And for those of you listening to the recording, that was the song. So we've talked about some ways today to reconnect with our spiritual source. And the last one is, if at any time you feel lost, alone, afraid, reach out to this community, because we are our greatest source for each other in connecting with spirit. And I wish for all of you, may you hear the voice of God. May you see the faces of God. May you feel the presence of God now and forevermore. And so it is. And Deb, I'll turn that back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sometimes when we're in distress, when I'm in distress, I don't even know it. I'm just walking around being in distress, and it takes a moment for me to stop and feel what's different, what's not working. So you've given several reminders, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. That is such a good point. Sometimes we may not notice, so it may take a friend sometimes too to us notice.
Well, like what's going on? What? I haven't heard from you for 6 weeks or whatever. So next week, we will be, it's our second Sunday celebration, so we'll have a potluck. And please write that down. Remember to bring something tasty and wonderful if you choose, because afterwards, it is coming after Mitzi and Joanna's report on their trip to Lourdes, France. And they are bringing all sorts of show and tell like we used to do in school, and information. So that's next week on the 12th in the flesh at the center. And November 17th is it's an official day for Food Share. They're collecting real live turkeys again this year, if you choose, or you can donate online if you choose to take your donation for food share, take it to the Lewis and Clark Library on November 17th. And we have several things that we're involved in. Catherine Metch, did I see you come in?
Yes,
Ah,
I'm
great.
here.
You're there. Anything new on Family Promise?
You know, there is, I went to the monthly meeting for the volunteer coordinators. But there's a little confusion on when exactly our next time of service is. It's either January or it's March. And so I will alert you, once I get that figured out. But otherwise, thank you for those who are always so generous in your contributions of time and money. That makes a big difference for helping these homeless families. So that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Reverend Charles, MYOB update.
Thank you. And we are having a 2-week series that began this past Thursday. Her name is Shawn Specht. She's a beautiful, young, vibrant soul, and she has been doing work for the past decade in nonviolent communications. So if you're led to tap in Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain time, we would love to have you, and you can get on board from the Helena website, and also just go to MYOB, spell out incorporated.org, and subscribe, and you'll get the ID information to get on. But it's really beautiful, and more than ever, we need skills in communications so we can realize how vital it is in the world we live in to be open and listening and tapping into maybe what we haven't known or understood. So that's what MYOB is about. So I welcome all of you. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you. Reverend Jean, did you get in and were able to stay in, or did that not work? It didn't work. She was having trouble. So she has her, I believe it's Wednesday morning meeting just to provide support to people. If you're interested, you can give her a call and she can give you the access. And then we do have a Course in Miracles, which meets every Tuesday from 1 to 2:30 at the center in room 214. So there are many options from our little center to provide support and friendship, some of the things that Orlinda mentioned. Did I forget everything? No, did I forget anything?
I just want to know if they're really donating live turkeys, Deb, like you said.
Not live
You said
turkey.
you could bring your live turkey.
Well, before, yeah. When we were doing COVID, we could only donate money.
Yeah, I just
I know. So a previously live turkey, a frozen live turkey.
Deb, could
Yeah.
I add something? Orlinda, thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, your service today was just like real life. Other blips along the way, but it's all made up for when I can see everybody and have that connection. Thank you for Deb and Maddie, Orlinda, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Well, Diane, it's good to see you. And that makes me think that all the stuff that you've been dealing with is pretty much over. So, okay. So Orlinda, will you pray us out of here?
Oh, well, sure, I can. I think basically about all that I have to, that I haven't said already was that enjoy your dates with God. Be willing to ask, be willing to visit, be willing to talk with God. And may we feel, as I said, that presence hear the sounds, hear the voice, feel the presence of God and the God in everyone and everything around us. And so it is.
And so it is.
Have fun on your dates.
Have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you.
And say goodbye.
Thank you, Orlinda.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Nice to see all of you.
Thanks, we got in finally. It was a
Yeah,
struggle.
everybody's looking good.
It was a struggle.
Yes, we kept trying, but we got there.
Well, I'm glad you got here.
We are too. Blessings to all. Thank you.
Thank you.